Hey guys, it is Tuesday, day one of online learning, March 17th. I have some notes in my phone that I wanted to start off with a quote or a thought of the day. And the quote is, don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. And that was John Wooden. So that's a good thought to have as we progress through these days of online learning and reading. I wanted to give a shout out to Lily Gross and Havana Royal. Both of you asked me today in an email for lesson plans and where you could find that. So kudos to you. Today I'm just going to pick up where we left off in the book. I'm not going to write any lesson plans for today. I want you just to read, do some quick review with your math. You have all the materials in front of you, all the materials available. I need a few days just to look at the material and go through and see what I can do and what I can't do with you as per district rules and that kind of stuff. So here's the thing. I'm not really sure where we're at in here, but here's my book. I've got my water and I've got my tea. I hope that you guys are keeping active and staying busy, not just staying sitting around the house and doing nothing and playing video games, which is fine. Just make sure that you're getting up and you're exercising and you're being helpful to your parents and all that good stuff. So, without further ado, I will continue in this chapter. We are on chapter, I believe, 7. And at the beginning of this chapter, he was trying to catch some coons, and so I'll just keep reading from on page 62. So it says, I came plowing out of the matted mass and was right on the trap before I realized it. I was met by a loud squall. I was so surprised I dropped the pups. There he was, my first coon. He was humped up on the sycamore log, growling and showing his teeth. He kept jerking his front paw, which was jammed deep in the hole I had bored. He was trapped by his own curiosity. I couldn't move, and I felt like my wind had been cut off. I kept hearing a noise, but couldn't make out exactly what it was. The movement of the boy pup shook me from my trance. The unidentified sound was his bawling. He was trying to climb up on the log and get to the coon. I yelled at him, and I darted in to get a hold of him on his collar. On seeing my movement, the coon let out another squall. It scared me half to death. I froze in my tracks and started yelling again at my pup. The first pup worked around behind the coon and climbed up on the log. I screamed at her. She paid no attention to me. Digging my sharp little claws into the bark, the boy pup made it to the top. He didn't hesitate. Straight down that sycamore log he charged. With teeth bared, the coon waited. When my pup was about 2 feet from him, he made a lunge. The coon just seemed to pull my pup up under his stomach and went to work with tooth and claw. The girl pup saved him. Like a cat in a corn crib, she sneaked up from behind him and sank her needle-sharp teeth into the coon's back. It was too much for old Ringy. He turned the boy pup loose, turned around, and slapped her clear off the log. She came running to me, yelping her head off. I grabbed her up in my arms and looked for the boy pup. When the coon had turned him loose, he too had fallen off the log. He was trying to get back to the coon. I darted in and grabbed him by his hind leg. With a pup under each arm and running as fast as I could, I lit out for the house. Coming out of the bottoms into a fresh plowed field, I set my pups down so I could get a little more speed. I started yelling as soon as I came in sight of the house. Mama came flying out with my sisters right behind her. Papa was out in the barn harnessing the team. Mama yelled something to him about a snake. He dropped the harness, jumped over the rail fence, and in a long lope started for me. Mama reached me first. She grabbed me and shouted, "Where did it bite you?" "Bite me?" I said. "Why, Mama, I'm not bit. I've got him, Mama. I've got him." "Got what?" Mama asked. "A big coon," I said. The biggest one in the river bottoms. He's this big, Mama. I made a circle with my arms as big as 20-gallon keg. Mama just groaned way down deep and covered her face with her hands. Some big tears squeezed out between her fingers. Almost in a whisper, I heard her say, "Thank God. I thought you were snake bitten." My sisters, seeing Mama crying, puckered up and started bawling. "He needs a whipping," the oldest one said. "That's what he needs, scaring Mama like that." Something busted loose inside me and I cried a little too. "I didn't mean to scare Mama," I sniffed. "I just wanted everyone to know I caught a coon." Up until this time, Papa hadn't said a word. He just stood looking on. "Here now," he said. "Let's have none of this crying. He didn't mean to scare anyone." Taking his handkerchief from his pocket, he stepped over to Mama, put his arms around her, and started drying her eyes. Mama poked her head around him and glared at me. "Billy Coleman," she shouted, "if you ever scare me like that again, I'll take a switch and wear you to a frazzle." This hurt my feelings, and I really did get tuned up. "Everyone's mad at me," I said, "and I haven't done anything but catch the biggest coon on the river." Mama came over. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be cross, but you did scare me. I thought a rattlesnake had bitten you." "Now that's settled," Papa said. "We'd all better get that coon." Looking at Mama, he said, "Why don't you and the girls go with us? I don't think it'll be long." Mama looked at me, smiled, and turned to the girls. "Would you like to go?" she asked. Their only answer was a lot of squealing and jumping up and down. On the way, Mama noticed some blood on my shirt. She stopped me and started looking me over. "Where did that come from?" she asked. "Did that coon bite you?" "No, Mama," I said. "I didn't get close enough for it to bite me." With a worried look on her face, she jerked out my shirt. "You don't seem to be scratched anywhere," she said. "Maybe this is where it came from," Papa said. He reached down and picked up my boy pup. His little black nose was split wide open and was bleeding. I saw a relieved look over Mama's face. Looking at me, she started shaking her head. "I don't know," she said. "I just don't know." Did that coon get hold of this pup?" Papa asked. "He sure did, Papa," I said. "But it wasn't the coon's fault. If it hadn't been for little Ann, he'd have been eaten up." I told how my dogs had tied into the raccoon. Papa laughed as he fondled my pup. "This dog is going to be a coonhound," he said, "and I mean a good one." The coon started squalling as soon as he came into sight. "My goodness," Mama said. "You wouldn't think anything so small would be so vicious." Papa picked up a club. "Now everybody stand back out of the way," he said. "This won't take long." My pups were wanting to get to the coon so badly that they were hard to hold. I had to squeeze them up tight and keep them from jumping right out of my arms. My sisters, with eyes as big as blue marbles, got behind Mama and peeked around her. Papa whacked the coon a good one across the head. He let out a good squall, growled, and showed his teeth. He tried hard to get to Papa, but the trap held him. The girls buried their faces in Mama's dress and started bawling. Mama turned her back on the fight. I heard her say, "I wish she hadn't come. Poor thing." Papa whacked him again, and it was all over. It was too much for Mama and the girls. They left. I heard the tall cane rattling as they ran for the house. After the coon was killed, I walked over. Papa was trying to get the coon's paw from the trap. He couldn't do it. Taking a pair of pliers from his pocket, he said, "It's a good thing I had one of these along with me. Would have had to cut his foot off." After Papa had pulled the nails, he lifted the coon's paw from the hole. There, clamped firmly in it, was the bright piece of tin. In a low voice, Papa said, "Well, I'll be darned." All he had to do was open it up and he'd been free. But he wouldn't do it. Your grandfather was right. A sorrowful look came over Papa's face as he ran his fingers through the soft yellow hair. "Billy," he said, I want you to take a hammer and pull the nails from every one of those traps. It's summertime now, and their fur isn't any good. Besides, I don't think this is very sportsmanlike. The coon doesn't have a chance. It's all right this time. You needed this one. But from now on, I want you to catch him with your dogs. That way that they have a 50-50 chance. I will, Papa, I said. That's what I intended to do. While we were skinning the coon, Papa asked me when I was going to start training my dogs. I don't know, I said. Do you think they're too young? No, I don't think so, he said. I've heard that the younger they are, the better it is. Well, in that case, I said, I'll start tomorrow. With the help of my oldest sister, we started giving my pups the first lessons. She would hold their collars while I made trails with the hide for them to follow. I'd climb trees and lean out over the river, jump out into the water, swim to the other side, and make trails up and down the bank. With a long pole and wire, I'd drag the hide on top of the rail fences, swing it through the air, and let it touch the ground 20 or 30 feet away. I did everything with the hide a coon would do, and probably a lot of things a coon couldn't do. It was a beautiful sight to see my pups work the trails. At first, they were awkward and didn't know what to do, but they would never quit trying. Old Dan would get so eager and excited he would overrun a trail. Where it twisted and turned, he would run straight on, bawling up a storm. It didn't take him long to realize that a smart old coon didn't always run in a straight line. Little Ann never overran a trail. She would wiggle and twist, cry and whine, and pretty soon she would figure it out. At first they were afraid of water. I never would admit it to myself. I always said that they just didn't like to get wet. They would follow the trail to the stream and stop. Sitting down in the rears, they would cry and beg me for help. With a pup under each arm, I'd wade into the stream and set them down in the cool water. 9 times out of 10, one pup would swim one way and the other would go the other way. I had a time with this part in their training, but my persistence had no bounds. It wasn't long until they loved the water. Old Dan would jump as far out as he practically could, knock the river dry. Little Ann would ease herself in the swim like a muskrat for the opposite shore. I taught my dogs every trick I knew and any new ones I'd heard about. I taught them how to split up on a riverbank to search the hidden trail because it was impossible to tell where a coon would come out of the water. Sometimes he might swim downstream and other times he might swim upstream. Maybe he would come back to the bank he had just left, or he would cross over to the other side. Perhaps he would stop in the middle of the stream on an old drift. Sometimes he would come over to the water by catching the dangling limbs of a leaning birch and climbing up, never touching the bank. Or he could come up the same trail he used to go in and backtrack. He would sometimes crawl up under an undermined bank or into an old muskrat den. One of my favorite tricks of a smart old ringtail is the tree barking trick. This is accomplished by running far up on the side of the tree and using his stout legs for leverage, springing 20 or 30 feet away before touching the ground. Dumb hounds trail up to the tree and start bawling treed. I taught my dogs to circle for a good 100 yards to be sure that he was still in the tree before bawling. In order to learn more about coon hunting, I'd hang around my grandfather's store and listen to the stories told by the coon hunters. Some of the tales I heard were long and tall, but I believed them all. I could always tell when Grandpa was kidding with me by the twinkle in his eyes. He told me how a coon could climb right up the fog and disappear in the stars, and how he could leap on a horse's back and run him all over your dogs. I didn't care, for I loved to hear the tales. Anything that had a coon hair in it, I believed completely. Sorry, my battery was dying. Late one evening, tired and exhausted, I sat down by a big sycamore and called my dogs to me. It's all over, I said. There will be no more lessons. I've worked hard and I've done my best. From now on, it's all up to you. Hunting season is just in a few days away, and I'm going to let you rest, for I want you to be in the best shape the night it opens. It was wonderful indeed how I could have heart-to-heart talks with my dogs, and they always seemed to understand. Each question I asked was answered in their own doggish way. Although they couldn't talk in my terms, they had a language of their own that was easy to understand. Sometimes I would see the answers in their eyes, and again it would be in the friendly wagging of their tails. Other times I could hear the answers in a low whine, or feel it in the soft caress of a warm flicking tongue. In some way, they would always answer. All right, so we'll read chapter 8 tomorrow. Again, I just want you to find a book that you want to read and do that. I guess that's it. I'll keep you guys updated as we keep going. I'll send out another video tomorrow. Good luck.